Welcome to Sandbox FOMO5 from Buro Happold. Each week we pick short snippets from our most recent episode for your listening pleasure. These quick listens could be valuable insights, thought-provoking elements, or even practical advice that will no doubt enrich your life and knowledge. Sandbox brings together curious individuals interested in a specific topic to discuss, dissect, and interrogate it. The style is conversational, with experts from Buro Happold and invited external guests who will add another angle to the narrative. Listeners are encouraged to gather around our podcast so that we can explore the latest advances in various fields and expand our collective horizons. Sometimes we'll tackle a subject head-on, sometimes a sideways view, but always with curiosity, expertise, and who knows, maybe even a dash of humour. Now, buildings such as libraries, art galleries, museums and theatres have, I imagine, very particular challenges to them, both in terms of sustainability and indeed in the way that we get people moving through that space. So I'd love to talk about some of those particular challenges now, because, you know, they're older buildings, they're listed buildings. Christine, I'll go to you first. What are these challenges?
So there are many challenges. I will start with that. And I think for me, they present themselves. There's two significant ones. The first is making sure that people are comfortable, equivalent to modern standards. So you can create in a brand new building, you've got everything in your control. You can design the entire building and all the services systems to make people feel exactly the level of temperature or acoustic experience you want. Trying to replicate that quality in an existing building can be really challenging. We're constrained in terms of the space that you've got. Usually you want to see the beautiful building. So where you can actually run things to put up I love the Albert Hall mushrooms are a great example. They had to embrace the mushrooms. They're not invisible. But a lot of buildings that I work in have historic listed ceilings with beautiful plaster work and paintwork. And you want to be able to enjoy that at the same time as standing quietly to reflect on the book you're about to borrow from the library specialist reading room, for example. So that can be really challenging. The other great challenge is the sustainability of these buildings. And I often get asked the question, is it really sustainable to refurbish these buildings? And I think we now understand that the carbon that we've burnt to create them in the first place counts for an awful lot. Yeah. So if we can then improve them a bit, such that their operational running intensity is far lower, by insulating, by controlling them better, by making sure they respond to the needs of people rather than being everything all on all the time. If we can make those savings, we can really start to drive into making these venues as sustainable as possible going into the future. The conditions, the challenge of achieving certain conditions whilst being sustainable is really challenging, because exhibits, materials, sometimes say paper. Let's take paper. Lots of exhibits in museums are paper. And I'm actually working with the British Library at the moment. They store a lot of paper in all of their books. Paper doesn't like to be too dry because it crumbles, and it doesn't like to be too wet because it goes mouldy. Now, to achieve that in a sustainable way, there's a band of temperature that we'd like to keep the space at. Now, this is actually quite a cool temperature, which isn't actually comfortable for people. So if you've got a museum and you've got these exhibits, the people want to be a bit warmer. They don't want to always be in there with their coats. And I can tell you, if it's been raining outside, we don't want them in there with their coats either, because they drip everywhere, and that's dreadful for exhibits. And in the case of the British Library, where they're a borrowing library, so they have to retrieve the books to be able to lend them out to the public, the person has to be in that space to retrieve them. So they don't want to be in a really cold environment. So in museums, we solve this quite often by actually containing the most precious exhibits in a specially conditioned case, which means we can condition a much smaller area within a building, which is much more environmentally friendly and sustainable. And in the case of the British Library, I'm working on a really innovative new project with them at the moment, which is a big collection storage facility where they hold most of their collections, which isn't at St Pancras. It's actually in the middle of the country, somewhere called Boston Spa. You'll never have heard of it, but just accept it's in the middle, right in the middle of the country, which made it easy for them to lend out to all the various parts of the UK. Now, there, what we've done is we're putting in automated retrieval systems systems, which takes the person out of the equation. And what this has allowed us to do is to hold the temperature much cooler, which means the big ventilation systems and heating, cooling, humidification, dehumidification systems that we would have once needed in this building, we don't need. So all that energy that would have driven those systems in the past, because we were trying to make the space suitable and comfortable for humans as well as the books, isn't needed. And their new facility is being designed to run completely passively. So none of these big systems are needed. Just the envelope of the building itself. This is what you can do if you're building from new. You can create exactly the environment that you want in a building by making that fabric that envelopes it really, really well constructed, completely airtight, really well insulated. And then those really intensive systems that you might once have had to have aren't needed anymore.
Brilliant. And Christine, this brings us rather nicely on to the Green Book, which is something that obviously Buro Happold's been very instrumental in helping to bring about. What is the Green Book? Could you tell us a little bit about that, please, and how that can help?
Yeah, so the Green Book, the Theatre Green Book, was first developed in conjunction with our own expertise, but also experts from the theatre world. And actually, the subject of sustainability is massively wide-reaching. And the Theatre Green Book was developed in 3 distinct sections. So it looks at how do you put on a sustainable production, accepting that there's a lot of energy and material waste in actually putting a production on, all those set changes, moving them around in the first place. It looks at sustainable operations. So how do you make sure your operation, dealing with all those people in, out, running a building, is efficient? And then it also looks at the sustainable buildings. How do you make the building itself more sustainable? And breaking it down into those 3 areas, we provided guidance that anyone can read, and you can really tangibly take away, well, this is what I can do for my venue. And the aim of the Theatre Green Book was really to put some knowledge in the hands of the people who can make a difference, who are actually running and operating these venues on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that quick dip into our last episode of Sandbox. Don't forget to subscribe to follow the show. You'll find Sandbox in all the usual places, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Buro Happold's YouTube channel, and on the Buro Happold website. What's more, if you want to join the conversation on X, known as Twitter to its old friends, use the hashtag #BHSandbox. We'd love to hear from you on any of the topics discussed.